So I wanted to kind of share a little bit about some of the things, because as we started to take this idea, we started to map all these different things that were impacting how someone felt about coming to work. And what we did is I put it into the book and I called it Culture Hacker. And the reason I called it Hacker is that one of the worst things I see in organizations is coming from the executive office or the HR team, there's this big memo that goes out and says, we're going to change the culture. Now everybody goes, shit, change. That's the first thing that scares me. And the second thing is, I don't know what culture is, but I'll probably lose my job because of it. Because it's kind of confusing. And I will tell you that we worked with a large sports entertainment company who exactly rolled that out, where the CEO sent a video out basically saying our culture is broken, everything is broken, we've got to change, and if you don't change, look out. Talk about the worst possible way to start off a cultural programming. And that is why I sort of said hacking. It's quiet, you're coming from behind, and there's so many things you can do without making a big deal about it that literally makes the employees feel better about coming to work every day. And that's what the book is all about. So I wanted to share some insights, some quickly kind of go through some high levels of what I'm seeing from the operations side and how maybe you can have some impact. So the first thing is values. I want to start there. Again, most managers on the operations side call bullshit on the values. It's some philosophical piece of paper that sits on the wall that people refer to when they feel like it. Here's the problem though. We better start feeling like it a heck of a lot more. You see, I think it's the most important thing today because, you see, values define how you act and interact with others, your customers, and even the company. Don't you think this how is kind of important? And yet managers don't talk about it. We have to get them to understand that it's critical that how we do business is just as important as how much business we do. And you see, this is where I think it's important because I see companies with values, yet I see them merely as a piece of paper. They're not used in the interview process. They're not involved in the performance management process. They're not used in the recognition process. And here's the important one. I never see them assigned to leadership bonuses or incentives. So why should I worry about values? They hardly ever come up except in that annual meeting where we get to throw them out to the world. And that's why they get called BS. We have to align these values throughout the whole company and make sure our leaders understand it's non-negotiable. And I see that's where we miss. Next, selection. We're spending all this time, and again, you are the proponents of the right fit. I get it. And yet your managers still hire warm bodies. Why? Because again, we're leaving it up to the managers to hire who they want. And I understand we're enabling and empowering and doing all those things, but it's been proven. A manager will hire a person that is a fit for them, not their organization. It's human nature. So what elements have you put into play? Like group interviews, activities that really bring values to life, where in the interview process, you're actually already testing to see whether or not they are going to fit. And here's the other thing. I know we're all into behavioral questions. Just last week, working with an organization, and they talked about, we wanted to completely change a frontline position, completely renew the mentality of this position. And then we said, we're going to hire all these new people. And we went back in and they said, oh, our behavioral questions are all signed up into a system. And they spit these questions out randomly. And we went through the questions, and it's the same questions. Tell me about a time where you made a customer feel good. Do you realize that every interviewer out there today knows the answer to that question? And they have made it up 20 times in their mind, and they know how to BS through it? Or tell me about a time a customer was upset and how you made them happy. They are making that stuff up. And yet, when I challenged it, I said, hey, we want to put some different questions. And, oh, no, we can't do that. They're programmed into the system. You can't change the questions. I'm like, what? You're being held captive by a tech company about the questions that you can ask? No wonder we're still hiring too many warm bodies. Orientation and onboarding. Sink or swim strategies don't work. And what I would say today, it's an incredible waste of talent. Now, here's where our millennials start to show up. Now, I grew up in sort of the hotel business, just as many of you probably came up in an industry, and you toughened it out. You were thrown to the front line on day one, and your manager turned to you and says, work it out. Anybody relate to that at all? And we came up with it, and that's why we get so annoyed at our millennials today. I'm a parent. I am taking responsibility for creating generations of people that cannot swim. And the problem being is the moment we put a challenge in front of you, they quit. I have tried to change it. It's in the water, it's in the food. But here's the problem. We can't keep doing sink or swim and think it's okay because we're ruining great people and talent. They're not as tough as we were. Let's just get over that fact. But sink or swim doesn't work anymore. The other thing I want to say is orientation and onboarding are completely different things. Orientation is day one. And I was with a gentleman called Horst Schulze. You may have heard about him with the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. It was awesome. And he said, and I'll never forget it, the first day on the job is your one chance to set the priorities for their career or time with you. But what does that mean? Well, what do you introduce on day one? Because many times I go to companies and on the first day, what does an employee do? Fills out paperwork. What's the priority? Fill your paperwork out. Then you do all the rules. Some of them apply, some of them don't apply. What's the priority? Follow the rules. Or on day one, we throw them straight out onto the front line, and so what's the priority? Do whatever it takes. Orientation should be an experience. It should be the best experience. We worked with a large apparel company, and it was amazing. You see the results back where the employee says, the orientation, my day one was the worst day on the job. Think about that. They're already deciding to leave you after day one because of a crappy experience. It should be the best experience of their whole careers with you. And the next 60 days, which is onboarding, teach them how to deliver a great experience to their external or internal customers. But we have to get this beginning right because we're wasting so much talent. Performance management. Our obsession with performance management is hurting our ability to maximize talent. Why? Because we connect performance and management together. Now, I'm all about managers. Managers are great. But if you look up the definition of management, it talks about controlling and making decisions. And I want you to think about that. Because we're so obsessed with performance management, what we do is we control someone's performance and we make decisions for them. How stupid is that if we've selected great people? So we've got to stop managing performance. We have to enable it and then empower it. What do? Hire good people, give them a great orientation, enable them through the right training, the right information, and the right tools. And then let them go. Let them make decisions. But we're still trying to control them because it's performance management. Control and making decisions. We're wasting and not using our full potential because we're not willing as managers and as teams to let it go. Next on the list, coaching. Feedback. It's all about feedback. The problem is that too many employees don't know how they're doing or what they need to improve on because we actually don't give good feedback. Now, two types of feedback. Informal feedback, casual conversations that doesn't require a manager to pull someone into their office. It doesn't require any paperwork, yet for most managers, that's the only way they know how to give feedback. You have to teach your managers how to have comfortable, casual conversations in the operation alongside their people that's not emotional, and we need to get consistent in it. I believe it's one of the most poorest utilized skills our middle managers have. They can't give feedback without formalizing it or pulling them into their office. And then when you come to formal feedback, performance appraisals, a waste of time. The annual review as it sits today is done. Yet, we still understand bonuses, incentives, and so many elements that you're combined with relies on that. So I get it. We might not be able to get rid of it completely, but you got to rethink it. Your performance review annually should be about achievement. It should be about goals. It should be about career. And what we need to start doing, and where you see organizations being successful, is starting to have more regular formal reviews, 15 minutes every month. Comfortable conversations that start to become more regular so that performance is not based on what they did last week every year or what they remember most, because most employees, it's been proven, they can't even relate to what you're talking about when performance is a one-year thing. Strategy, scores, and plans. We're still not sharing with our staff the objectives of the company, the measurements on which the company will fail or succeed, and as a result, we're not engaging them in the plans. This word transparency that's thrown around all over the place, you got to understand, and I still meet managers that go, wow, we can't share the financial numbers with the staff. You know what? We don't want them to know how much money we make, or we don't want them to do it. They don't understand it. They don't need to know about it. Are you kidding me? In today's transparent social media world, they probably know your numbers more before you do. And they're looking it up, and they know it anyway. So what's the big secret? But you see, my thing is, if you don't share objectives, if they don't know what your goals are each year, and they don't know how you're measuring it, then how can you get them to help you improve? And you see, that's the thing today, is we should expect that our employees are part of improving our business. Not an option, it's an expectation. It is a responsibility. But if we're not going to share the good data with them, if we're not going to give them the real feedback, then how can we expect them to truly engage in your company? Because honestly, that's what I think engagement is. Their ability to really think and help you get better, whether achieve goals or improve the business towards those goals. Recognition, I don't really say, Michael, Bob, you kind of covered it all this morning, but remember, one size doesn't fit all. We have to start those generic, presence-filled sort of programs where we're rewarding tenure, where we're waiting for the next person up. That has to become more meaningful, and there were some great insights on how to do that this morning. Accountability. We've stopped having tough conversations, and we've stopped making tough decisions, and that's as managers, that's as our operations. And the question comes back, why? Well, if you talk to the managers, they'll talk about tough HR practices, unions, managers that don't, or owners that don't support them. But the reality is a lot different. What we're seeing today in managers is one, this whole relationship thing with staff is really making this fine line kind of difficult. But more importantly though, our aha moment was we see so many times when it comes to disciplinary action, you're doing it for them. They've actually become useless at it because you take it over from them. You get involved, then you make sure that you're all over it, you're making the tough decisions. You're actually making managers worse at this by not letting them get involved. And yes, they may mess it up, but you have to let them go with this. So please make this a focus. Teach them the process. Guide them through it. But stop being there every step of the way because they've become reliant on you. And they've become so reliant that honestly, they don't see it as part of their job anymore. They just like playing good cop all the time and being best friends. Career development. All our millennials, all our Zs, they want to talk about it. The problem is many managers don't and many organizations can't. What about the managers? Well, they're kind of a little worried right now because millennials are running through them at 100 miles an hour. So they're not going to talk about career because they're trying to save their jobs. And that's a problem. The other thing we see is organizations aren't having that conversation. Why? Because you're sitting down and going, well, there's no sort of advancement available right now, so let's not talk about it. The reality is, career development today for many of your people are going to happen outside your organization. We got to get used to it. And it's not a bad thing because what we're seeing is that the good people may be coming back. And even better than that, the millennials are very good at recruiting their replacement as long as you're a good place to work for. So even if you can't advance them or you don't see that opportunity, start talking about their careers. Start talking about development, knowing that, hey, you know what? It might not be with us, but we're going to get you to that point. Because that reputation will be the one that the millennials will start talking about and bring you their replacement, which is big. Communication. We've got to start communicating with them in their preferred method of communication. We do this with customers. We've got to start doing it with employees. And guess what? They like to be texted. They like to be communicated on social media. And if there is ever an advancement in technology, you're seeing these great social media platforms that are allowed to bring internal elements that they use in their real lives right into the workplace. What I would say is those annual meetings, and in fact, kind of any type of meeting, is kind of getting old. In fact, most employees today see meetings as a complete waste of their time. Yet for us old people, we still like our meetings because it makes us feel good that we're ticking the boxes. But remember, communication is about understanding. And if I stand up here in 45 minutes, half your employee group will walk out the door and fall asleep because that's not their preferred method. They need to process it in their way. So therefore, your challenge is communicate as many different ways as possible. And I got to talk about one more thing about communication because I think it's a problem. And you have to get your managers involved in this. Listening and multitasking are really, really, really bad combination. And yet, too many managers are asking their employees to come in, sit in my office, tell me all your problems. Oh, don't worry, I can listen and write on my computer and answer text messages and do emails at the same time. Bullshit. And you know how we know? Because every employee is saying so. It is now becoming one of the most disrespectful practices in business. We don't listen anymore. We're pretend listening to everyone because we're so addicted to the smartphones and computers and tablets. We have to start thinking about letting that go, at least for certain times throughout the day. It's kind of like the wellness in your own lives. And again, when you sit down with your families at dinner, you don't need the smartphone. You don't need the tablet sitting next to you while you have a conversation. And yet, for many people, they say they do. We've got to learn to do the same at work. Environment. One of the things that comes out a lot is that the modern consumer and customer has now got so much knowledge about products that when they come in and judge experience, they're really using their senses. Smell, sight, touch. All of these things are a big part of judging customer experience. Well, guess what? Your employees are the same. Employee experience for them is becoming very sensory. Now, I give you a great example. We were in New York probably about 4 or 5 months ago. Beautiful new offices of this marketing advertising company, gorgeous. A lot of money had been spent. They had the beautiful kitchenette and the coffee stuff going on. I was like, wow, this is impressive. Then I walked into their restrooms and it was disgusting. You see, they made it so beautiful, but they felt that it was only necessary to maybe clean the restrooms at least once a day on the overnight. And you see, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that became a real stigma of what was missing because the senses were completely destroyed. Because you see, that little mishap, because I only wanted to clean the bathrooms once a day, says more to the employees about how you care about them than anything else. Because why? It's the same with our customers. They use their senses. It tells them a lot about how you think about them. So you've got to think of all elements of the environment. Process. You have to show that you value your employees' time. In customer experience, it's the number one thing we talk about. So what do you do to value your employees' time? Well, I would say the biggest thing today is cut the bureaucracy, the red tape, the paperwork. When I hear how long it takes for some employees to get paid and they have to fill out all these forms in case they're lying to us and all the BS they got to go through, and we make them wait 5 or 6 weeks to get a check cut again, that's wrong. Your job and our job is to make that bureaucracy and respect our people's time from the moment they come in your organization. We've got to start using our technology to make life easier. Wellness, got to throw that out there. Wellness is not just 10,000 steps a day. Now, I will tell you, as I said, we went to a wellness conference, and what was really startling is they did a study that talked about wellness from around the world. And they said in wellness in America is about steps, and it's about kind of how much you can do. Wellness in Great Britain was how you looked. Very important because they get beach time for about 6 weeks a year, and it was all about looking good on the beach. Again, so that was a Great Britain. When you go through Europe, wellness was about how well you lived. So there was focusing on much more than just the physical. And then as some of you know, you go through Asia, and wellness is how long are you going to live? You see, our approach to wellness is really immature. It's a great start, but we've got a long way to go. We develop a lot of training programs for organizations. Our number one requested program last year was time management, and close behind it was stress management. We have to start teaching some new skills and some new elements to help with this overall idea. And it's not about balance. It is about people living well. And most importantly, we got to talk about people living longer, because that's what the rest of the world thinks wellness is. Leadership development, don't just start once you give people a title. One of the craziest mistakes I think we make. Someone gets a title, and I'm like, great job, John, you're a supervisor now. Now I'm going to put you through leadership training for the next 6 months. Meanwhile, in that 6 months, John manages to tick everybody off because he doesn't really know what he's doing. Again, a large organization that we work with right now and that we started to put a plan in, the moment that an employee finishes onboarding, and it was anywhere for about 45 days, they had the option to elect immediately into leadership development. And that leadership development had enough sort of content and progress to go on for about a year to a year and a half. They had the option. But they already started thinking, and let's face it, our millennials think after 30 or 45 days they should run the company anyway, so why not get them involved? I promise you, it's one of their important elements that gets them really fired up. As I start to think, so that's just kind of like some feedback and some ideas and things that we've done from working with so many different companies and that, and kind of throw it out there. As I start to kind of wrap this up, I want to bring it back to you a little bit. And I kind of where I started, and again, about 35, 40 minutes ago. But I give you this quote: change is not just something everyone else has to do. I think it's so important today as HR professionals not to think that change is just for everyone else in your organization. If anything, part of what your leadership responsibility is to take the lead on change, not just facilitate change. Change in what you do on a daily basis, how you think, how you approach, how you incorporate so many different elements. And I would challenge you that this is the most important thing, whether it's listening to people like myself that you may think has no HR integrity or background, and yet I am more passionate about culture than anyone you'll meet, I promise. And we now work with executive teams and groups to really get to that understanding. But there is still just about you. Because remember, it's no longer just an HR thing. It is that business thing, but more importantly, it's that everything. And if I can sort of give you sort of my final advice and I talk about what is the future and what does HR look like, it would be this. I think there's 4 roles that you need to become really, really good at, that you need to take on and to think about. The first one, you have to become a consultant. What does a consultant do? They collect data and information. You need to become data experts. You need to be bringing data to the bottom line. You need to be bringing data to the table if that's what you're wanting to get to. But you've got to get data. And then with that data, you create plans. And then with those plans, you execute. You make sure that that execution is happening throughout the organization. The second thing is you got to coach. You need to be coaching your managers, not doing it for them, but giving them feedback where they operate. See, here's the piece, HR. You got to get out of your offices. In fact, I would take away your offices. Because see, I believe where you're going to have the biggest impact is right next to your operation brothers and sisters. They need you to coach them on how to give feedback, how to have conversation, how to do recognition. In fact, all the things you've talked about in this conference, you need to pass on to those managers, the ones on the front line. And you can't do that from your office or your desk. It has to be out there. So coaching means to be effective. It's got to be timely. It's got to be consistent, but it's got to be in the operation. So please get out of the offices. Conductor. That was a word that we heard from Bill last night. And what did he say? And it was so powerful because I used the same definition. A conductor is someone kind of like a generalist who is responsible for a number of experts. You probably all came up as generalists. My advice to you is you need to start hiring experts. Stop hiring and growing too many generalists. You need to get a data expert. You need a data training expert. I get it. The admin wanted a promotion, so you made her the training coordinator. And so now she's doing training for you and kind of learning as you go. I get it. It's awesome. But if training is a priority, then get someone who can really train or teach that person how to really train. But you can't wing it anymore. You need to get a team of experts under you and be the conductor of all their expertise. And as I would say, the most important position I think that needs to be in HR moving forward is you need your own IT and data expert. Because you're waiting too long for IT to get you what you need. And then the second one is, if you need to get a creative person who actually creates internal marketing, then get that person. Because I know you're sitting around waiting for marketing to help you, and they are so damn busy they never get to you. Find your experts. And the final one is be that catalyst for change. The catalyst is really simple. You have to be proactive. You have to be the reason for change. You don't need permission to get to the table. If you're not invited to the table, as someone said yesterday, create your own table. Stop getting so caught up in whether or not you're invited into certain meetings. And don't wait for permission. I talk to so many HR people, and they sort of talk about culture, and they go, I'm waiting to have my meeting with my president or my CEO to give me permission to start this culture initiative. Start it. The question is not, do you have a culture? It's what is your culture? And the longer you're waiting for someone to say tick, the longer you're not in control of what the most important and critical element of your business is all about. So be a catalyst. Get with your operations people now. Be their coaches. Be the conductor. Be their consultant. You don't need permission to do that. And yet your greatest impact in the future is going to be your ability to impact customer service, your ability to impact productivity. And I'm telling you now, you're going to have the biggest hit on that bottom line into profitability. And that's kind of like some of the things that we created and I wrote the book about and we continue to grow, whether it's workshop series, consulting strategy, all the things that you need to be doing. But if you need some help getting there, don't be afraid to ask. Thank you guys very much. I hope you enjoyed the session. And again, I hope you enjoyed the